everyone. This is Heidi Moyeso-Kansman and Celeste Carmichael, and we're very pleased to be with you today. This is a recording of the presentation we gave a couple weeks ago on CCE's role in enhancing community capacity. So we'll get going, and just as a starting point, as you think about this along the way, for this, please be giving some thought to what is community development from your perspective, and how do extension educators support community development. Our goals for today are really to consider the ways that we in Extension both strengthen communities through building collaborations both within and between them, and also the way that we support our connections and our collaborations both between campus and community and our national leadership that supports Extension work. So we're looking at it from two different perspectives. You won't hear us mention the word collaboration very often, but that's really an overall theme in this process, and that's what community development is all about.
I'll just add that one of the things that we're going to highlight is ways that cooperative extension educators through the program development process are uniquely enabled to do community development work. So the community development and the program development process are very similar, and we're going to try to highlight that so that you understand that that's exactly what you're doing.
Good point, and I'll just preface or add to that before getting to that point, we'll talk more about the relationships between some key concepts related to community development, being capacity building and sustainability and resiliency. We'll also talk about the roles that Extension plays in the community development process, and then we'll explore the link, and as Celeste just mentioned, between what we do in community and supporting the community development process, and then CCE's plan of work process. Okay, because we're re-recording this and you're not there to ask us questions in person, we just wanted to highlight our contact information right out of the gate. If you have any follow-up questions, please do get a hold of us. We're happy to address those. Okay, so starting right off with the working definitions and concepts, and we will be posting a fuller definition of each of these key concepts, but for now I just want to highlight some basic points about them. So what do we mean by community when we talk about it, anything? Well, I think one of the first things that's important to remember is that it means different things to different people, and that they're still not, but it has some key elements in those definitions, and we'll talk a little bit about those in just a second. One of the key aspects of it is that usually community is place-based, although I would say that that's a little bit different, or changing, evolving a little bit as we have more virtual communities that we're connected to over a broader space through shared interests. But in any case, in most communities, a key part of it is that there's opportunities for regular interaction among the folks who are part of that community, and that they have a shared interest. I would also go even beyond that shared interest to say that when people understand their role in community and feel a part of it, they not only recognize that shared interest, but they have a sense of responsibility for supporting efforts to achieve that shared interest. And I think we could have a long discussion about whether people who are part of a community always have that understanding. I think that's really debatable, but I do think a key part of what makes a community work efficiently and effectively are when people do recognize their shared interest and do have that sense of responsibility to support the pursuit of those interests. So the second part of community development, the other key concept, or another key concept in there, is development. What is key about development is not that it's something that someone is doing for us, it's that we are able to identify the goals that we want to achieve as a collective group, as members of that community, and then work towards it. And what's key about development is that we have the environment that we're working in, the community that we're working in, is one which enables us to do that. There are some communities, as we know, both probably domestically and internationally, where there isn't a lot of opportunity for people to contribute, and really our goal in supporting community development is to facilitate that enabling environment, to allow people to create and shape the futures that they want to achieve. So when we put these two concepts together, and think about community development, there's a couple of different ways to think about community development as a whole. One is to think about it as a type of development where people interact socially, are developing social bonds, and I would say that that really is the key to other types of development. And if you look, there's a definition that I've shared that is by Mark Brennan, who's currently at Penn State. He used to be at the University of Florida. And he talked about development of community. So again, when people come together and create a sense of cohesiveness, a sense of community, understand their shared relationships and are willing to work together. So that's really, when we think of community development as a type of development, it's about those social bonds. It also can be thought of as a process, and I think that's a more common way that we use it. And sometimes we don't even know that we're using it. I'll go into a little bit more detail about that process, but it's really a systematic way in which community members work together to identify and pursue their goals. And this process, because we're using this systematic process, going through each of these steps, again, whether or not we recognize those, I think that varies, but we usually do in this process go through certain steps in identification of goals and pursuit of those, and that really is the process that we use to achieve other types of development. And if you look at the Brennan definition, he refers to that development as development in community. And so you might think of those other types of development as economic development. You could also think about it as achieving goals related to education or healthcare or built infrastructure, but those are other things that within a community we seek to achieve. So I'm going to go into that development model. And so this is a standard model. This was actually taken from Growing Home, a Guide to Reconnecting Agriculture, Food, and Communities, which was published several years back by Joanna Green and Duncan Hilty, and this was a model that Joanna, many of you may know her, used in thinking about the role of community development in the context of ag and food-based development. But it's really about certain steps where we gather a core group together, or a core group in extension certainly comes to us because we have either a problem we'd like to have you help us address, or we see an opportunity that we'd like to have you help us address, or we go out and see an opportunity or problem that we see our communities needing to address. We gather a small group of people together who are really key stakeholders in whatever that issue is. We work with them to engage other stakeholders in the process. We also create a shared vision with them, and we say, okay, this is the issue, this is the problem, and this is the opportunity. Where is it that we want to go with addressing this opportunity or challenge? We, continue to bring diverse stakeholders into that process. So I would say that sometimes that creating a vision and engaging diverse stakeholders can be flipped. There are key pieces of it. We analyze the situation, which means we're thinking about where are we now with respect to where we want to get to. What are the types of assets that we have to get us to where we want to go? What are some of the challenges that we're going to face along the way? We get more specific about what we really want to have. So it's such a big vision, but we say, okay, specifically within that bigger vision, what are some outcomes that we want to achieve? We set priorities within those outcomes, because it could be a whole host. We can't do them all the time, or we have a timeline to achieve those within. Then we identify short-term, medium-term, longer-term objectives within that prioritization process. And we start to plan and implement the project and specific actions to achieve those objectives. The key part of it is the evaluation. Often we don't think about that early on, but I would say that's as important as the planning process, that you set up as part of the planning process, an evaluation process, so that you're monitoring the way, and then you come back to the beginning. So it's really an ongoing, evolving process. What I want to be clear about is that I would say there's lots of different points at which we, within Extension, come into a community development process. Sometimes the core group has already been gathered, there's already a vision established, and we need some help achieving this. Could you work with us? Other times we start from the very beginning. And again, going back to the point that I'm not sure that sometimes we in Extension think of ourselves working through this process. I think understanding the process and recognizing that, in fact, it happens in lots of different ways, and that we can come in at different points helps us to be able to assess a community development process, think about people where people are at, the community are at within this framework, and then think about ways to move forward and what are the next steps. So I just share that as a model to help frame some of the work we do, and I think it speaks very directly to what we do. And Celeste will talk about this more a little bit later on in the context of what we do with the plan of work within Extension. Okay. I just want to note with community development approaches and using this model, there's some key aspects of it, and they represent really what has been thought of as more as a new school approach to community development. And you can see how it contrasts with some of the old school, but it's very community-based and participatory. So again, the core group is based in the community, and we bring broader members of the community, all stakeholders, pro and con to the issue into the process. More recently, I think we're moving in a regionally focused direction. So again, we think more broadly. We do it within smaller communities, but we also think about the impact of the work that we're doing and try to bring in, as appropriate, partners at a regional level. It's about long-term empowerment. So folks go through this process, and we guide them and we help develop skills and tools that ideally set them up to pursue their goals independently later on, or perhaps with some support, just so that it becomes part of the way that they do business within their communities. It's very inclusionary. There is respect for diversity of people, opinions, and experiences. Again, it's collaborative, and it respects multiple ways of understanding the world. So there is certainly a research-based component, which we often bring, depending on the topic, to it as Extension, but we also respect the experiences of the folks that are involved. And it's also asset-based, meaning that instead of saying, what do we need to bring into our community that we don't have, we think about what types of assets and resources we have locally to help us get to the end result that we're searching for. And again, you can see how that contrasts with the older school version, which is really determined by, often we bring in consultants. They would really say what we needed to do within our communities, and it was focused on individual communities as opposed to thinking more broadly. It was short-term related to that specific project and achieving the goals of that, and not thinking about how to build capacity within the community to achieve goals in the longer term. Sometimes it was exclusionary, top-down, just focused on a few group of people, and often in the old school, if there were differences sometimes between people within the community about the issue, rather than addressing those, sometimes the folks who were opposing to whatever the core group might think that they wanted to achieve were left out of the process. So, and oftentimes it was really primarily research-based or experience-based, but not bringing in both. And again, needs-based, bringing in what do we have to do to bring in from the outside to achieve our goals, as we're thinking about what we have locally. So I want to be clear that these are ideal types. It's not to say that the old school was all old school and the new school is all new school. But those are, I would say, the new school being the goals that we're seeking to achieve within our approach to community development, in contrast to the way that the older school was traditionally implemented. Okay, so back to a few more definitions and concepts. Community capacity, so another term that we often use and think about in the context of community development is building community capacity. And so really that's helping people to have the knowledge, so the understanding, the skills, and resources to do that identification of what it is that they want to achieve and help them achieve those goals. So a key part of that concept is the community members possess the knowledge, skills, and resources and are also able to use it, and they have then the capacity to work towards the goals that they want to achieve. I would say at the heart of Extension, we are capacity builders. We help community members acquire that capacity, the knowledge, skills, and resources to achieve their development goals. And I'll just point out that we do that with an Extension both with individuals and communities. In this context, we're talking about it within our role as community developers, so working with groups of people towards their common goals, but we certainly work and build capacity with individuals as well. So I think that's a pretty common concept across the Extension system. So why are we building capacity? Why are we supporting community development? And it's really about the long-term long-term sustainability and resiliency of our communities. We're trying to help people achieve those broader goals so that they're vibrant communities in the long term across a span of time. And there's some key definitions, again, when you're talking about sustainability and resiliency. And I think resiliency is really more of a more recent term that's been brought into the conversation. But when we talk about sustainability, it's development. So here we go. We're bringing back to the earlier concept and kind of coming full circle. But it's development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the needs of future generations. And you'll see in the definitions that I shared, I think that comes from the UN, but that's a pretty common term, a common definition for sustainability. There's key components related to sustainability, the recognition that there are ecological limits that we have to work within as we seek to achieve our long-term sustainable economic and social goals. And then there's a social justice component that everybody needs to have the opportunity to live in a sustainable world. And this resiliency, I just pulled this definition out more recently, but it's the ability of the community to return, one way to think about it is the ability of the community to return to a pre-disruption state of well-being. So it's not just that we're thinking about long-term sustainability, but as we have events, and particularly more with climate change, events that disrupt our state of well-being, are we able to get back to the state that we were previously and then go on to work towards, I guess, more enhanced sustainability goals and social well-being overall. So those are some key concepts, and I'm just going to expand a little bit on that sustainability issue. So I have here that these are evolving views of the community, and it's really, I think, about evolving views of sustainability and the connection between economy, so our economic development, our social development, and then our ecological state. And so this is some work that was done from colleagues that are in the more central region of the state. And I think that it's really a helpful way for thinking about the connections for many of those concepts that I just shared. So in the beginning, we really thought of the link between economy, our society, our connections to other people, and the environment as separate silos. Following that, we started to say, they're really connected, they overlap, and we could see that core point of overlap in there, that what happened in one did have impacts on the other. More recently, the way that folks are modeling this and thinking about sustainability is the understanding that the environment or our ecological capacity is really the base on which everything else rests. Next, you can think about people, and then we have goals. In this case, we highlight economic goals, but I would make the argument that you could put other types of human development goals alongside economy there. But it's just the understanding that whatever we're going to achieve requires a sustainable environment, a healthy social connections, people working together, and then we can move forward towards other types of goals. But without each of those, it doesn't work. So, and this is, some of you may have heard of the Community Capital Framework. This is something that's put out by Neil Flora. She was, and Jan Flora. Neil graduated with her PhD from the Department of Development Sociology at Cornell, and she's looked at communities both domestically and internationally, and what they found is that those communities that are basically most healthy over the long term pay attention to 7 different areas of assets, and they think of those as capital, meaning that you can invest or deplete those local assets. But I also think if we go back to let's see if I can use my pointer. Can you see this? What do we have there? Okay. Okay, we'll get out of that. Okay, well, I'll just talk about it. So you can think of natural capital, if we went back to that last model. The natural capital is really what we have, the ecological capital, that's the base of everything. On top of that, we have social capital, so that being our social relationships. And then I would say all of these other areas, cultural capital, human capital, political capital, financial capital, and built capital are the different types of development goals that we have. So built capital, you can think of as infrastructure development, financial capital, the monetary systems that we develop, our monetary economic exchange systems, political capital, who has power within our social systems. Human capital is our personal and collective development. How do we increase our leadership skills, our understanding of the world, and so it's kind of a capacity building piece. And then cultural capital being what types of shared connections and shared understanding of the world do we have, but that really goes back to our social relationships. So I just point this out to say that you can kind of think of these models are just two different ways of looking at the world, but what's key here in terms of this broader sustainability perspective is that from the florist perspective, you really need to be equally investing across all of these in order to attain or achieve that long-term sustainability that we're seeking and hoping to build community capacity for. Okay. So when we talk about thinking about helping communities build towards long-term sustainability, it's really an interrelated approach, as we just mentioned with those models. There's a very long-term focus. Again, it's inclusionary. There's different indicators of achievement, broad that meet diverse interests of a group. Integration of knowledge, again, including local wisdom, and it's working across it in terms of sustainable development. We're thinking about this at a global and local level. So I only point that out to say, it fits very closely with the newer school approach that we talked about to community development. Okay. So again, just to kind of recap those definitions, to connect to that, we're talking again about community development, our role in it. We build capacity to help community members attain sustainability and resiliency. What does this have to do with extension? I would make the case that that's really the heart of what extension does. We work with communities at different levels. We work with individuals, obviously, but a lot of times we're working with groups that can be thought of as communities, whether they're groups of producers or a neighborhood community or a regional level. We're trying to build the capacity of the folks that we are working with, helping them to identify, pursue, and achieve their goals. It's really about helping them with self-determination. We do this through community development and seeking that longer-term sustainability. Okay. So again, you have our contact information. If you have questions, please let us know. That was a lot to throw out there. So what are Extension's roles in community capacity building? And when we did this live, we did ask you to share your roles. And here's some things that I think summarize some of the things that you have talked about. But we, in general, we provide training both on community development as a concept, what is community development, but we also talk about the pieces of the community development process. We facilitate that, again, whether or not we're thinking about that as the whole process or we understand the process. I would make the case that we are doing the process, coming in at different points along the way to help communities achieve their goals. And then in that process, we build social capital of the communities that we're working with. And we do that not only in the process, but otherwise. We are very often setting the stage to build collaborations, to help network people and bring them together. During our live session, we gave a couple of examples. Sharon Anderson talked about her work in the town of Caroline, supporting Energy Independent Caroline. So this was a group to develop a plan for energy independency in the town of Caroline, and she talked about some of the things that they came out of that project and really the ways that they use the community development process to do it. One of the things that I think I'll just emphasize in Sharon's absence was that she noted the bumps in the process, and I think that's really, really important. Having that model makes community development look nice and neat and easy, and I would argue that in any process, I think as we all know, bringing people together brings in diverse perspectives and can be messy, and that's just part and parcel of what we do. But again, having a process, having skills and resources that I think we provide through Extension Admin to help deal with some of those controversial issues and help people along the way can lead to some very positive outcomes. And I'll leave it to you at some point to connect with Caroline, or with the town of Caroline and with Sharon to learn more about it. But they had some very positive outcomes of that process. And again, they also had some bumps in the process. And ultimately, as some of the focus changed to the Marcellus shale gas drilling issue, they got a little bit sidetracked off of the original goals of it, but again, that's part of the community development process. So I want to mention one that I've been a part of with colleagues in Tioga County, Chemung County, the North Country, so based in Franklin County with Bernadette Logazar, and also with in the Central Adirondack Marketing Region, and this is the Stronger Economies Together program. It's a national project that's been implemented, I think, in over 60 multi-county regions in the country at this point. And it really, you can see I've put up on the left some of the different modules, but it's really a training process that at the same time simultaneously leads multi-county regions through a planning process to identify regional economic development goals. So how can they work together to achieve their goals at a regional level? And this is with the understanding that it's really in part because of global competition and the way the world works anymore, we can't really achieve our goals independently of working together across the multi-county region. We don't have the resources to compete at a global level. And so, but a key part of this, and going back to the community development process, is it brings a broad group of folks together to identify their goals, and so it's not just the traditional economic developers, but members of the health, education, housing, tourism, arts and culture, so a broad array of both agencies and organizations represented across the region. They go through the assessment process, so where are we now and where is it that we want to go, and as part and parcel of it, they do some pretty intensive economic analysis that looks at their competitive advantage across the region. So, okay, we have these goals, but is it realistic that we have these goals given the current state of our economy and some of our opportunities? And a big part of it is that asset-based approach. So we have thought a lot within these regions about what assets do we have locally to help us achieve those goals, what can we build on locally. And so in many of the sites across the country that have done this, there's been a strong focus on ways to support import substitution. So in some of the ways our economic development strategies, sometimes there's outsourcing currently, or there are ways that we could be doing some more stuff locally to strengthen and enhance our economy. So I did mention that there were two happening, the Central Adirondack Marketing Partnership with Caroline Williams, and then the Northern New York STEP team led by Bernadette Logazar. It's really important to mention, too, that this has been in partnership with USDA Rural Development. The program is spearheaded by USDA Rural Development at the national level, and then in collaboration with the Regional Rural Development Centers, extension faculty, and then again, extension and rural development working together at the state level. So you can see the target areas that both of these groups focus on. These were areas that they developed strategies for economic development, and you can note in the Central Adirondack, they really said, there's more infrastructure development before we even get to some of these more specific economic development strategies that we need to achieve. But I will point out that in both of these, they have worked closely with the regional economic development councils. Sometimes there's been a couple different councils in the regions that these groups were working in, and that they have had several projects that were spawned by the SET project funded through the Regional Economic Development Councils, and then moving forward. The third one that I mentioned in Tioga County really used SET as a way to explore the feasibility of developing a bioenergy economic development strategy for the Southern Tier. My understanding is that they are recently now seeking funding to develop a marketing strategy based on that to support many of their current bioenergy initiatives. So just a brief overview of using, again, a community development process to achieve other development goals. And if anybody wants more information, I can share that. I won't go into this now, but I just wanted to point out that there is a national project, too, that uses the community development process to address poverty, and so it's called the Horizons program, and they're doing some really, really great things, and again, in the North Central region, but it is very, very much community engaged. So you have the link there if you want to learn more about it, how they are going through the process. So I just want to point that out. So,
and Heidi, before you go on, I just know that different folks are tuning into this with different needs in mind and different stages of the process themselves, probably as educators or staff members or associations that are working in the community development world. So just to point out that the link with the video shows some pretty
nascent projects.
Yeah.
So they're at different stages, and I think that's equally important to point out is the messiness of the process. Again, is that we come into this at different points along the way, and if you go and check out that video, you'll see, I think, what the important part of it for me is that it does start out in those nascent stages, but also by the time that you get moving through the process, people do feel very, very empowered, and you see lots of spin-offs because of that empowerment, because of the way people are brought together and know how to collaborate with one another. They better understand their local resources and then how they can put those to good use to achieve other goals. So, I guess just to summarize a couple of key points of those community development projects that are within Extension both in New York and at the national level. Again, they're community-driven. Extension has served as a facilitator. We've guided the process. We've provided evidence-based information. We have brought in the community. We've started with a group of people that they've helped us to identify more people that should be included, and we've pushed them to do that, to say, who isn't at the table that really has a stake in this issue. The community engagement has been broad and diverse, as I mentioned. We have data on this for the SNEP project in particular, but there may be some data for some of the other programs as well, that knowledge, skills, and resources have been strengthened across the program period. There have been tangible outcomes, and again, that it has served as an impetus for more community action. There have been spin-offs as a result of these projects that have led to further community collaboration and the pursuit of their goals. Okay, what we will do now, again, any questions about any of the projects, I'm happy to point you to additional information. What we will now talk about is just some of the resources that are available to support our work in community development. So I'm going to focus on some program development guides, tools for working with communities, and then some more substantive support. So a big thing is that there are as you may know, CCE is going through a process where they are developing evaluation plans for each of their program areas. So there is one for community and economic vitality, our community development area. This is just an example. We'll be sharing that in the upcoming months as it's finished off, but it will provide a common base, I think, for our evaluation so that we're identifying some common indicators and things that we think are important in our community development work, and it may serve then as a model that you can draw on to evaluate your own efforts. But I think it helps us to think about the work that we do in a more consistent fashion than maybe we have in the past. So I applaud Extension Administration for pushing us all to do this.
Probably important to know that you don't have to read all of those.
Yes. It was just to show you a logic model, just as an example. But that, if any of you are in the Netway, it is up on the Netway, and you can check it out there. If you want more about it, I'm happy to share that as well. So what are some tools to support our work? I just want to point out this one. This is something that I think helps launch community development projects. This is a tool that's developed by the University of New Hampshire, Maine, and Massachusetts. It's on the University of New Hampshire's website. You can go on to their site at this link that I've provided you. It'll ask you to select your state. You click on New York, And then you can click on any one of these areas, and it'll ask you questions about your assets in your local community. And it's a really nice tool for identifying a baseline of where you're at in your community relative to the goals that you want to achieve. And you can kind of think of these as those capital areas that I identified before in the community capital framework. So if you're interested in thinking about how are we positioned to support the health and well-being of our citizens or economic opportunities, go in there, you answer the questions, it gives you a score, and then helps you think about your strengths and weaknesses. So it's a nice way to start a discussion with a group who wants to pursue broader community development or even within one of these specific areas. This is a tool, again, developed in part by Flora and Company, but it's using community capital to develop assets for positive change. It's just to point this out that it's a nice workbook with tools for helping, for working with communities. So if you're looking for worksheets and things to guide you along, I would encourage you to do this. And it's really working again from that asset-based approach that helps you identify your assets and then think more about how do we enhance those assets using this community capital framework. This is really important. Hopefully you are all familiar with e-extension. It's our tool across the national extension system to bring together our program areas and support it at a national level. So this provides you with an opportunity to work with other extension educators in your field. There is one, it's not currently launched yet, that is called Enhancing Rural Capacity, and it's really about rural community development. I would say, though, that there's certainly a lot of overlap between community development in rural areas and urban areas, so those of you working in more suburban or urban areas can certainly gain some tools that will be up on this. But eventually you'll be able to go to this e-extension site. I guess it's not coming up on this, but will show up on the copy that we can send you. But over here you will see under community, something will be enhancing community capacity. You'll be able to click on that and you will be able to find the tools that I just mentioned and many others will be posted there for supporting community development. It also has an opportunity for asking experts. So if you have questions about community development and how to support it, you can go and ask your colleagues across the country to help you with this, and you are supposed to have responses within 24 hours. So keep that in mind. Okay. So we just wanted to mention also that there's some upcoming training at the national level supported by the community practice that I just mentioned. It's understanding communities and their dynamics. It brings faculty members from across the country into 7 online sessions. They're an hour and a half each for 7 weeks between October and November, and this is really something designed for community development practitioners. I will say we've done it several years now, and we've had both folks that are new to this profession and folks who've done it for a long time. We've heard from both of them that it's been very helpful in terms of thinking about the work that they do. So we encourage you to look for Save the Date announcement, which we just sent out. Our Target Community Development Institute is here just a week and a half away. Please think about coming to this. It's really designed to support local officials and community development practitioners, and it's designed to help, you can see the topics that we'll be addressing, but really to help support your community development goals, and there will be some substantive focus areas on the key concerns in our communities that we're dealing with as well. So you can see some of those there: food systems, community and energy, school services, and then regional community insights. Okay, and then I think what we'll do now is transition into the last work.
Okay, thanks, Peggy. So what you see here on the screen is probably should look familiar. It's the community development process model that Heidi shared just a few moments ago. And what I wanted to just kind of point out to you is this process of analyzing a situation and considering what it is that a group of people can do together and setting priorities and objectives and planning. Actually doing a program and then evaluating is a lot like what we do and what we train our staff to do within Cornell Cooperative Extension. It looks a lot like what we call our program development model. And that was an aha that I think that I certainly had in preparing for this webinar and working with Heidi in the last few months is thinking about how we are so uniquely trained and available within communities as Cornell Cooperative Extension to assist communities with the community development process, because it is absolutely the same process that we look at in developing programs. The difference, of course, is once a community gathers, creates a shared vision, on the educational program development process, community or extension associates are then looking, extension educators are looking at what's the niche and priority for Cornell Cooperative Extension? What's the educational component that we can address as an organization? So community development, a little bit more broad, program development, a little bit more narrow and focused on the educational components that Cornell Cooperative Extension provide. But the process from start to finish is pretty much one and the same. So I do believe that we are ready and able and uniquely poised to help there. So one of the things I just wanted to point out, and my part of this training is pretty brief, really, but wanted to point out to our staff, where can you get training on standard elements of the program development process? Where can you find the tools to help assess and develop and design, implement, evaluate your program, or strengthen community development programs, as well as any other program that you do in Cornell Cooperative Extension? And if you haven't heard about it already, there are a number of program development courses that are available for Cooperative Extension staff 24/7. They're available through a content management program called Moodle. You can get to them from the staff site for Cornell Cooperative Extension, so that's just staff.cce.cornell.edu. And if you click on program development and then click on courses, you'll see that full list of courses. You can tune into any one of them sort of a la carte as you need it, or you can tune into the certificate. You can get a certificate of leadership development or a certificate of program development if you want a little bit more substantive information and content within a shorter period of time. So here's another look at the page. So when you click on program development, click on course description, and then choose a particular course, like this is a course in utilizing logic models for program development. On each of those pages, for each of those courses, you'll find there is a full ongoing course or a webinar recording, so you can kind of tune into what it is that you need. Many of our educators have asked over the years for particular resources, so we have found not only knowing that some resources are useful, have the research and the knowledge and the use behind them, but some of them are kind of the favorite resources, so those resources are pulled out for each particular program. And then there's also external resources that we know are particularly useful. So external resources being resources within other land grant systems. So just want to point out that all of those things are there for you when you need them, tools and resources that are available. A couple of the key components of the program development or community development model that are important. We're working hard now to try to pull some of the key resources that you need for, like, any new educator, any veteran educator really needs to have handy when they're working through a new program development or community development process. So I'm going to just point out a couple of them so that you have a visual for them. One of them is a stakeholder worksheet. So I talked a lot about stakeholders, knowing who those stakeholders are, knowing the kinds of things that they want, knowing who you have to partner with, and maybe definitely considering what your niche is and how you can help them and maybe how they can help you. So there are some worksheets, resources that will help you to consider who those stakeholders are and what they need to know and how you might want to report back to them on. So there's two different tools that we recommend that folks use. One of them is just a listing who those folks are and what kinds of things they need, and also a stakeholder analysis that looks more like a target, considering the program and considering on a close level who it is that you're partnering with, and then farther out who is out there that may care about the program but may not be as closely aligned with the process. Another tool is a logic model. So if you haven't used the logic model before, sometimes I feel like we've been talking about and training folks how to use logic models for a long time, but they may not feel comfortable yet, or maybe you haven't had an opportunity to sit down and use one as you're planning a program. But a logic model really can help programs and help communities to plan with, you can do it two ways. You can put your outcomes on the forefront, so thinking first about what it is that you want to achieve and then work backwards. If you're starting a new program, that's really ideally the way to do it. Or you can, the logic model can help you to model what it is that you're doing, what you're investing in right now, who the people are, what they're doing, what activities they're doing, what kind of outputs there are, physical tangibles from a particular project, and then how that is getting to the achievements of the outcomes that you're looking for. So somewhere in between is usually what I find staff use a logic model for, somewhere in between mapping a program that's already happening and considering first what the outcomes are and how we're going to get there. But again, that's another tool and a resource that can really help with decision making. So I'll also point out, you may hear from me most regularly around things like reporting and the plans of work. And I just want to point out that as you're considering community development work or your program development work, that you also might want to think about how what you're doing on a local level fits into things on a statewide level and a national level. So you may know that we have statewide plans of work in all of our priority program areas and NIFIS priority program areas, and we expect that local plans of work or your association plans of work kind of fall or nest inside that statewide plan of work. And internal to that are specific program logic models. So as you're planning a particular program, it should make sense and fit in with nest in to your association's programmatic goals. And thinking about things in this nested way can certainly help you to make decisions about what's in and what's out in terms of where you prioritize and where you spend your time and resources within the association. So, and again, this is just another way of thinking that all of these local plans that you're doing may fit and nest quite well into a local community development plan. So if you think about that community development plan and consider where extension fits in, where our niche for our resources and our staff fits in, you might have to consider where that local plan of work and how those parts and pieces meld together so that all the dots connect and you don't have individual silos forming around particular programs. So where do you find the statewide plans of work? That's a common question that I hear. So again, that staff site for staff.cce.cornell.edu. Click on program development, and then on the left-hand side you can see where program planning and development is, and the page that you see right here is the program planning and development page. Inherent to that are the plans of work, and so you can find plans of work for each individual program area, like for-age youth development, for example, or obesity and nutrition. So all of the plans of work are there, and they're by year. We have to submit a 5-year plan of work on an annual basis, so the rolling plan gets adapted and tweaked a little bit year to year. So what do those plans of work look like? The plans of work are pretty much formed like a logic model, have all of the content that you might need as you're writing grants and considering how you work with your local communities. You might need some content and background on needs, some of the issues, some of our responses to cooperative extension, what our systematic goals or outcomes might look like, and those are parts and pieces that can be found within a plan of work. So again, there's the URL for plan of work. This is the plan of work for global food security and hunger for fiscal year 13. And you'll see it includes some background information. It also includes some assumptions and ultimate goals of what we think our cooperative extension program fits in. And it also includes some outcomes. And those areas that you see highlighted in yellow there are the same outcomes that you're reporting on at the end of the year in the federal plan of work reporting system that everybody works on. That's September, October, November for Cornell Cooperative Extension. So why are those important? I've mentioned those outcomes because as you're thinking about your logic model, as you're doing some planning or considering what it is that you can do to assist the community in a community development plan, thinking about those bigger picture outcomes for our state and maybe who around the state could help you to achieve those things, whether there are other educators or folks on staff. Really, this can be a critical part in helping you to connect the dots and be a little bit, have your efforts be more fruitful in a bigger way. So I mentioned the connection to the Business Systems Launchpad. BSLP is how it's shortened right here. But the Business Systems Launchpad has connections to all of the reporting data, program data and success stories, and program participant volunteer and mailing lists, as well as some other resources like the org report that might help you to connect and find partners within our system. When you're considering what program that you're doing that falls within a community development plan of work or community development program and goals, I would also suggest that those things fit and get nested in your local plan of work or how you're locally defining a particular program. So you see here several examples. These are for Sullivan County. This is the 2012 plan, so it's a snapshot of what they did in 2012. You can see under name, those are their locally defined programs. And under the plan of work items, those are the plans of work that their program had at the beginning of the year was seeking to connect to. And when you develop your local plan of work or you develop your program, you're also, and you're choosing those plan of work items, you're then choosing outcomes that are going to be connected to it. So you can get a quick look at that and decide on how you're going to plan for that at the beginning. So where is all this stuff that I mentioned? I mentioned all the courses that are available. Those can be found in moodle2.cce.cornell.edu. It's all part of the program leadership curriculum. You can find reference to all of these things on the staff site, staff.cce.cornell.edu, and click on program development. And you can find support for any of these things through our Office of Organizational Development within CCE administration. So Celeste Carmichael, CJC17@cornell.edu, if I can help you in any way through the courses or helping you to achieve a certificate in program leadership curriculum. Okay, so I'm going to skip over these trainings, which were intended for our live audience when we did this live. But I want to thank you for tuning in, and if you have any questions at all, please feel free to follow up with myself or Heidi. We really are here. We are really here to help you, and I'm glad to share with you. Thanks so much.